Hello, welcome to Cybersecurity in Construction, staying safe in a world of threats. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Adam Friel. I'm the editor of Onsite Magazine, and I will be acting as the host for today's 60-minute discussion that aims to provide us with an overview of some of the risks that are playing in today's digital world, as well as some of the takeaways that we can use to help mitigate risks and losses due to some of the shadowy characters who look to prey on companies and organizations. So today's sponsor, our title sponsor for today's event is Revisto, a leading integrated collaboration platform used by professionals across the architecture, engineering, construction, and operation industry. Using gaming technology and cloud solutions, Revisto provides a BIM collaboration platform for 3D and 2D workflows that enables users to streamline their work and communicate with all project stakeholders in a unified single environment. The company's platform allows users to embrace the power of technology to build a brighter, more innovative construction industry. I encourage you to visit Revisto's website to explore their collaboration tools, and I thank them for sponsoring today's discussion. Without their support, we would not be able to host this conversation about navigating safely within our digital environments. Before we get started with our full discussion, I have a few little housekeeping notes that might help navigate today's session. The audience, it's yourselves, will be in listen-only mode. You'll be able to choose between either seeing a full screen of the person who's speaking or a panel view where you'll be able to see today's guest and myself at the same time. Select the style that you prefer by using your Zoom webinar controls on the top of the window. And today's program, the plan is for about 45 minutes or so for a formal Q&A session, followed by a few minutes where we can take audience questions. If you have questions you would like to pose to Craig, you can type those in at any time using the questions tab at the bottom of the screen. We will be keeping an eye out for questions during the session, and we'll try to answer as many as time will permit. And with that, let's dive in. Construction is filled with risks, although some are more easily spotted and managed than others. And as we sit firmly in the digital age of construction, where apps and software are in use on sites daily, contractors need to be aware of those who lurk in those digital shadows, the people that are looking to steal information, wreak havoc, and even extort money from victims of their cyber crimes. And unfortunately, the stats really suggest there are only two kinds of companies in this world, those that have been hacked and those that will be. So much like having a crisis plan for when accidents happen on sites, it pays to be ready for when the hackers come calling. And to help companies face this risk in the real world, I'd like to welcome Craig Hurst. Craig is the COO of the Net Effect Contractor Advisors, Inc., and is also the chair of the Canadian Construction Association's Technology Committee. He's going to outline some of the very real threats that contractors face and sharing how to spot and identify infiltration attempts, what to do before and after a company has been hacked, and all kinds of good, solid info like that. So welcome, Craig. I'm looking forward to hearing and sharing your insights.
Thanks for inviting me today, Adam. You talked about a couple of different things that I think the audience need to be thinking about as we move forward. You just made the point about the fact that there's really only two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that will be. And then the other thing that's really key is you mentioned a lot about the shadows, and the characters that are out to hack are hiding in the shadows. We call it the deep web. And you've covered off a couple of key points already.
I may have stolen a few words from some of our conversations over the past little bit, so let's kind of set the playing field then of where we're going to go with this. In your words, what do you think where should we be talking today? Why does this matter to construction firms? And when it comes to cybersecurity in the construction sector, why should companies be paying attention to this issue?
Well, first off, it's the issue of cybersecurity is becoming a billion, maybe even closer. Well, many billions dollars worth of problems are coming forward. Construction businesses are not exempt in any way, shape, or form from it. We tend to think that, who are the companies that are going to be vulnerable? Are they the ones that are issuing credit cards or utilizing credit cards for payment processes? Or they've got a lot of user identities in their databases. The fact of the matter is, every company is as vulnerable as the next, and there really is no reprieve. And so construction, just like any other industry, needs to be on top of these issues before these issues get on top of them.
Excellent, thank you. And what kind of risks or attacks are we looking for in this sector? Is it really the malware and viruses? Is it creating chaos within shared systems through hackers? The ransom attacks. What's really happening out there? Like, what are the core areas to that are, I guess, current?
Well, cyber, we used to concern ourselves with malware and viruses, right? People were creating viruses 10, 15, 20 years ago just because it was malicious, which is what malware is, the name, where the name comes from. However, in today's day and age, they are monetizing these issues and these attacks, and figuring out how to extract hard-earned dollars and cents from the victims that they're going after. So, we're talking today about malware and viruses. They haven't gone away, but more, there's ransomware. We know that that's the kind of thing that happens, and that's what the insurance companies are deathly afraid of, I should say, is what's happening with respect to ransomware. How are companies being held hostage in order to make a payment, in order to retrieve their data and get back into business? That's probably the biggest concern in the cybersecurity field right now.
Excellent. Now, is this only something that's impacting large companies? Like, who's at risk?
Every business is at risk. Quite frankly, there's not, the ones that are at risk are the ones that are not prepared for it properly. Small companies, small contractors are being attacked, as well as the big enterprise contractors. The big enterprise contractors, though, have the tools and have the teams that can help prevent significant damage being done by a cybersecurity invasion. Smaller companies, local, regional, doesn't matter whether you're in residential or you're in ICI, whether you are a subcontractor or a small GC. The fact of the matter is the hackers are taking a look at those companies just as strongly as the big enterprise companies these days, because most of those companies don't have effective cybersecurity protections and practices in place. And so the hackers know that they are vulnerable, and there's a point of entry.
I guess it kind of comes down to if you're, regardless of the size, if it's going to impact your business, it's going to impact your business. You need to be paying attention to it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the loss of revenue that can be had through not paying attention to it can be very, very significant. I just spoke about ransoms. Ransoms are only a part of it. Loss of revenue for and because your business processes have gone down for a period of time. And everyone can say, well, as long as somebody's got a toolbox and they're on the job site, our projects are going to keep moving on. That's a pretty naive point of view in today's day and age of construction technology. Everybody's using something, and to lose it in any way, shape, or form in terms of the digitization of your business processes is going to have a cost associated with it. Does it mean that your projects are going to stop? Maybe not, but there's no question that there will be a financial impact in terms of, number one, projects going down. Number two, getting your system set back up again. Number three, the costs associated with some of the legal impacts that are going to take place. And then number four, reputation damage. It may not show up on your profit and loss statement this month, but if it became broadly known that you had a cyber attack, you started to lose business because of it. You may not see it or feel it right away, but the public, your customers, may feel very, very vulnerable if they know that's going on.
Excellent. Thank you, Craig. Saw a question here. I'm just going to address it real quick because it's a housekeeping note asking if a recording of this is going to be accessible to everybody. We are going to email out a link to the video. Normally, it's either a day or two, sometimes about a week afterwards, depending on timing of things. But there will be a video going out, and this will be on our YouTube channel as well. So you'll have a couple opportunities to review the information shared here. So sorry, Craig, I figured I'd take care of a couple housekeeping things there. So you know, we know that all companies need to be on top of this, and without a dedicated IT department, those companies can be pretty vulnerable. What can we start doing to reduce risk here? What are some of the easier steps that that companies of any size could implement? And I know a couple of your notes that hopefully you'll be touching on, because our companies put a few of these in as well. But again, if you could talk to us about things that even if you don't have a dedicated IT department that you could tackle and just reduce that risk down a bit.
So there are a great number of things that can be achieved on an individual basis without the need to go and, excuse me, without the need to go and spend a lot of money in terms of hiring somebody to help you with your cybersecurity plan. But it really comes down to planning. And it also comes down to employee training. When at the end of the day, we have, when we look at what's happening with cybersecurity attacks in the current market space, we generally find that it's because the organization has not, number one, taken the time to adequately understand what cybersecurity issues are out there, what their vulnerabilities and their risks are, but more importantly, taking that kind of information to the next step, which is training staff. And also, it's important to recognize that you have to work within your entire stakeholder cluster. So if you're a general contractor, that means you could have vulnerabilities that are being pointed at you because of your subcontractors or your suppliers. So it really comes down to understanding, number one, who's involved in your digital ecosystem. Number two, what kind of vulnerabilities do they have as individuals? And then number three, how can we button down the hatches so that those vulnerabilities are less likely to cause us a problem? It really comes down to having a cybersecurity plan internally, and it doesn't take a lot to create one.
Excellent. What about things like two-factor authentication, better passwords? Do we have to have 400 character passwords, or what's typical advice for those sorts of things?
Yeah, 400 character passwords. There was a period of time where I did a lot of projects with the government, and they wanted, it felt like they wanted 400 character passwords. Fact of the matter is that number one defense against anything with respect to cybersecurity is multi-factor authentication. We are all getting used to it now, and we all know what it is. If we're doing anything like online banking, if we're doing if you order anything from Amazon, or you do you do any kind of exchange of information that is considered to be personal these days, there's generally two-factor authentication in the process, or even multi-factor. So it's happening. We understand it, we accept it, but within our own businesses, we are not demanding it yet. Right? We expect that, we think, well, that's a problem for the banks, or that's a problem for the major online retailers to manage. And, anytime you're using a credit card online now, multi-factor authentication is, excuse me, I got multi-factor authentication is being used. But within any business now, even if you think you've got a relatively simple process and nobody's going to be interested in your information, putting in dual methods, so strong passwords is part of it, but a multi-factor authentication comes in the form of having somebody answer a skill testing question, basically, or utilize a number, a code number, authentication number that they've been sent via a text message. So those are the kinds of things that are the first line of defense when it comes to cyber attacks.
Excellent, thank you. What about buy-in for crews? That's one of those big struggles, I think, and especially in the construction sector, where I've seen things like the change from copper to plastic took a little bit of time on piping systems and things like that. How do you get buy-in from crews? And also, if you don't mind touching on this, the importance of not sharing passwords and credentials. I've seen times where one crew will go in and everybody's using the same credential.
Yeah, and the other strange thing about that is if we talk about site crews, it's usually the site superintendent that created, if we're talking about a group authentication, the site sup is the one that created the password in the first place. And if you explore it, quite often what you'll find out is it's the same password that he or she used for their bank account, or for any other login, or it may have something to do with their kid's birthday. Well, those sharings create vulnerabilities. And when we take a look at performing what's known as penetration tests, or pen tests, as it's referred to in the cybersecurity protection community, those are the first things that they look for. Let's look at people's birthdays. Let's look at their addresses. Let's look at a bunch of different things like that. And sharing that across a large group is, well, now all of a sudden it's like how do you keep a secret? You keep it to yourself, right? That's the only way to really do it.
True, very true. Talk to me a little bit about toolbox talks. Like how easy is it to slide in the cybersecurity discussion on the job site as a reminder? Are we going to bore people to tears by reinforcing it constantly, or is it just you got to reinforce it, otherwise it's not going to get done?
Well, I think you have to reinforce it from the point of view of it's as much a safety issue for a company as making sure that your people are using scaffolding properly, or you're doing a field hazard level assessment on a site location every morning. We don't think of it as safety because it's not like people are getting injured, but in this sense, the safety component is safety, the protection of the company. So toolbox talks become very, very important. We are dealing with the digitization of a mobile workforce, right? There's not too many companies out in our industry. I'm going to sneeze sooner or later. Excuse me.
No problem. It just proves that we're not using AI for the presentation. It's live people here.
Exactly. It must be all that pumpkin spice I ingested over the weekend. But the point being is that we're dealing with mobile workforces, and it may be something as simple as a time tracking tool that every staff member is using on their phone these days, and so everybody's got a level responsibility with respect to protecting that safety factor. And so toolbox talks, putting together corporate policies that are included in your onboarding sessions with new employees that talk about here's how we handle cybersecurity issues, here's how we handle the privacy of information issues. Those are all important things to get across and have regular reinforcement. We've all had the toolbox talk, which shared with us something that was vitally important, but we never talk about it again. Well, I gave that talk sometime this year. Well, as a site super or a health and safety person or somebody that's responsible for the IT in the company, I want to be reinforcing cybersecurity policies and best practices on a regular basis in our organization.
Yeah, I guess it's funny because in marketing we always talk about repetition and delivery of message and getting it to stick, and then certain topics that are vitally important on a site, they're mentioned once and forgotten about. And you've always got new people coming into your sites. You've always got these new opportunities to learn just that little bit more because there's only so many nuggets that stick each time. So it's interesting to see that. Yeah.
That's right. And you hate to think that the reinforcement is only going to come after there's been an incident. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
When we put together an incident plan for cybersecurity, one of the things that you do recognize is that after an incident takes place, you want to triage it or investigate it, which then creates some substantial learnings. What did we do wrong, or what caused the vulnerability, or what could we be doing better that would prevent an attack in the future? All of those questions get asked and hopefully answered in the post invasion process. However, it then causes usually a lot of conversation and educational opportunity, unfortunately, after the fact. So if we continue to think about doing it as a regular piece, just like we would think about, we've got to do an annual update for WMIS, or we've got to do an annual update uh, close confinement training, or working at heights. All right, we should be doing a similar kind of thing for cybersecurity amongst our staff as well.
Thank you. Um, Looking at the assortment of files and the data that's in play in construction nowadays, we're looking at planning docs, payment information, personnel files. It's all out there. Does it make a difference whether a company's using, say, a cloud server or if they've got an on-premise server? Is one more advisable than the other? Share with us, if you don't mind, any best practices when it comes to how we store our data.
So the first point of concern with respect to data storage is the fact that we should be conducting very regular backups of all of our data systems. Whenever, I've got a backup data system that sits on my desk all the time, in the form of this is a two terabyte backup tool that I just use on my own files within my computer. It's not to say that everybody needs to do that, but corporately, you want to be doing a backup of everything that's created a minimum once a day. And if you think you're vulnerable, you may want to be doing it more regularly than that. If you are a large enterprise, and we know who we're talking about in the construction space, We all know their logos, and we see their projects going up in all of the cities across Canada. If we are a large organization, construction organization, we probably have an IT team who are thinking about this and doing this kind of preparation work or prevention work on a regular basis. But I can almost assure you that their data backups are many, many times a day. Secondly, the next point is the vulnerabilities associated with the applications that you use. Anytime one of your software vendors sends you a notification that says, here is the latest update, do it. The main reason why they're doing those updates, yes, they're always going to tell you that a big thing that they're doing is giving you a new function or a new feature, but facts are facts, and you will find that most of the time they are doing something to improve their system security in those backups. If you are not, or pardon me, the updates and the patches, if you are not doing those patches when you find out about them from the software vendors, you are leaving your system vulnerable. So that's an important thing with respect to data. The privacy of information is very, very key. All right. Where are you storing? Sometimes we tend to leave data on our most vulnerable aspects of our system, on our, websites and things like that may not need to be there. If, as an example, you've got human resource files that have very, personal and sensitive data on them, try and find a way of keeping them off of the web channels as much as possible. And then the other thing is to, when we talk about data, clean your data. All right, if you and organize it properly. A lot of companies still have disparate silos of information in one application versus another. And what you may want to take a look at is getting that properly organized and having it hosted in a way that is really well structured. You asked the question about whether or not applications in the cloud or on premises are better. Let me address that. Number one, it a lot depends on the size of the company. Again, if you are a large enterprise and you've got on premises, and just for those of the audience that may not be aware, that's when we used to take the applications and load them into our computers or onto our servers. All right. If we're still using that type of on-premise application, but we are a small company without a cybersecurity plan, without an IT department, we are probably more vulnerable than using what's known as an in the cloud or a SaaS application, because those companies that are hosting those applications, be they Microsoft or AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, or GPC, which is Google application services in the cloud, they have extraordinary security in place. Extraordinary. They have to, or they'd be out of business, because the size of their organizations and the number of applications that they host would make them exceptionally vulnerable to hackers. So if you're a small company, focus on the cloud. If you're a big company, on-prem is fine. If you have a very, very good team and policies in place to manage them.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the policies and whatnot. I figure even with using long passwords, unusual characters, companies do get hacked every single day. And so what should a company do if they're hit by a virus? I know you talked about backing up of files. Tell us a little bit about, maybe making use of those backups, or and also building the crisis plan. What should be part of the cybersecurity crisis plan?
So what the cybersecurity crisis plan, you know what? You're asking a question for which we've got a really good idea of what that plan should be. Well, it basically is talking about what is cybersecurity training. And let me just I'll pull up the slides, the couple of slides after we're done here. Number one, um, the crisis plan begins with that education piece, Adam. So having a basic cybersecurity awareness program. Number two, making sure that you've got strong password management in place. Number three, the multi-factor authentication processes are in place. Number four, you have phishing and social engineering attack awareness. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about specifically phishing, because it's the one thing that everybody, regardless of whether you're working for a construction company or you're just browsing at home, or checking your email at home, that's a vulnerability that everyone is exposed to. Your plan needs to have a safe use of devices and applications. I'll expand on that for a moment here. We are expecting many people in our organization to provide their own devices. We're expecting them to work remotely, or maybe not so much now, but think about back to what was happening during COVID. All right. Everybody was working from home. Everybody's working on their phone. Everybody's, is utilizing data and accessing the company's information through a great number of different tools. So we need to make sure that everybody's devices and the subsequent applications that they use are safe and sound. Uh, the other, we need to put together a plan that clearly protects data and privacy. I mentioned that a few moments ago. We need to establish safe internet and email practices. And so those are the plans. And then we need to have an incident, uh, uh, um, what do we do in the case of a cyber attack? Let's put that plan together. Who's going to be in charge? How does it get identified? Who do we inform? Do we inform the police? Do we inform our insurance company? Do we inform all of our nears and dears, as I call them? They could be our suppliers, our subcontractors, anybody who has a substantial concern about us being hacked. Who are they going to be, and what do we inform them? So there needs to be a communication plan, and there needs to be designated people that handle that incident occurrence. How does it get reported, and what is the response? That planning needs to be put in place. How do we put together a strategy? A few moments ago, I talked about the effects that COVID had on working remotely. Do we have a remote work plan, particularly as it impacts what we call BYOD, or bring your own device, whether that be a smartphone or a tablet or somebody's own laptop at home? What are the physical security plans that we put in place? How do we physically lock our equipment up? Do we allow people to leave a laptop or a briefcase or a tablet in a vehicle that's unattended or overnight? Not to say one is right and one is wrong, but put a policy in place that says if you're not going to be in your vehicle overnight, bring your device in with you so that if your car got broken into or your truck, right, it doesn't all of a sudden create a cybersecurity concern. And then lastly, what are the legal requirements that we're going to have related to a cybersecurity attack? What are our legal responsibilities and compliance responsibilities? Who do we have to inform? What do we need to do with respect to being sued by somebody whose information you let out? What's our legal responsibility to the owner of the building that we're working on? Those are the kinds of things that need to be planned out and prepared for.
Thank you. I think let's dive into one particular type of infiltration. Let's talk about ransomware, because that's the one that we've heard some stories about. A certain city out my way may or may not have been a victim. The what should you do if you get that demand from somebody shady saying they're going to crash your system, they have access, and or that they have crashed your system and they want payment before they'll grant access back? Talk to us about walking through a scenario like that.
So number one, that instigates your infiltration or incident response right away. When anybody in your organization has been approached, and I can tell you one thing's for certain: the person that they're going to inform is probably not going to be the IT department. It, in all likelihood, let's understand how the ransomware users work, the kidnappers, if we want to call them that. They all have access to the latest and greatest corporate information available. If any of the audience has heard of applications such as Zoom Info, the ransomware users have Zoom Info. They can look up your business and they know what your revenue range is. They know who your CEO is, who your primary shareholders are, who's who in the zoo. They have also like taken a look at your LinkedIn page. It's not to say you shut your LinkedIn page down. Just know that they're going to access that information, and they're going to know an awful lot about your company before they send you that threat. So everybody in your organization needs to know what happens if that threat comes in the door. The ransomware the ransom requesters are generally going to target you at about 30% of your annual revenue. Know that in advance. That's what they're going to ask for. They know that you could pay that out on your own if you needed to. All right. But what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to say, no, we're not going to accept that. That's your first line of defense. The first thing that you want to do technically is you want to shut everything down. All right. You want to be able to isolate the intrusion to the one or two areas. If it's just a threat right now and you haven't actually seen any technology impacted, like everything's still working, it may just mean it's just a threat. If, on the other hand, you get the threat and at the same time you're noticing that a particular application or a database is not behaving in the way that it should, you want to shut down and isolate that particular instance. That instance of the application, turn it off. If it's a database system, make sure that you've got it disconnected in whatever way you can. Your IT department or your IT consultants will be able to provide you with assistance on doing that. And then the next question is, before this happens, talk to your insurance company. Talk to your insurance company will
Yeah, that was an interesting one because it changed an entire industry. The seal caps came in, all of that. Absolutely. Talk to me a bit about the use of your backups with regards to ransomware. If you are noticing something not functioning properly, how I guess that points to the importance of those backups and whatnot, right?
Absolutely, those backups are critical. You want to make them happen, like I say, ideally multiple times a day. If you have a constant flow of inbound and outbound information, if you're, a little bit less and you're used to basically, you've got your accounting department is doing their accounting on a daily basis, and you've got a group of, a small group of end of day reports. Maybe multiple times a day isn't necessary, but at least once a day you do that backup to an independent location that's disconnected from your system. You'll notice that my backup tool is never connected to my system. I plug it in, I do my backup, I unplug it right away. Right. And if I was, if I was running a company here, I happen to be working from home today, but if I was running a company, I would want that backup to wind up being offsite. Right. So that if your facility got broken into, no, they're not going to have the ability to tamper with it. When the invasion occurs, you do not run to your backup and plug it in right away. You want to make sure that your IT department or your IT consultants are brought in and work with your SaaS vendors. If you are a small company and you have most of your applications are up in the cloud, working with your SaaS vendors, make sure that everything is either a new setup of your existing tech stack, or it is isolated and ensured to be clean before you input your latest backup of your data. Otherwise, you could be backing your data up into something that is still vulnerable and still exposed to the ransom demanders.
Perfect. Thank you. Talk to me a little bit about insurance. I know you talked about that a little bit. Is it an option to get insurance? Is it advisable to get insurance? What's some advice on that?
Absolutely. Most commercial insurance these days comes with cybersecurity riders, if not a designated cybersecurity policy. If one was to buy a cybersecurity policy as a standalone coverage, generally in Canada right now, they'll run somewhere in the vicinity of oh between I mean I've seen some I question them if they are under $1,000 a year, and I've seen some for smaller to medium-sized organizations running up to $7,500 to $10,000 a year. The variance is driven by number one, the size of the company. Number two, do you have a plan in place? What are your internal cybersecurity practices? Number three, how many devices are we talking about, and where are they located? Are people coming in with BYOD, bring your own device? And if so, do you have policies in place in terms of what is being expected of them? And then other aspects of it, they an insurance company will come along and they'll say, let's see who your customers are. What kind of data of theirs or related to them are you collecting and holding? What kind of vulnerability do they have if that data was to be released? So let's take sort of an extreme in Canada. If I was doing a project for the Department of National Defense or perhaps the RCMP, and next thing you know, I was impacted by a cyber attack, and there was a direct relationship, albeit DND and the Mounties tend to know how to isolate themselves from this kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is, if I had information that was of national security and that was released, the insurance company is going to say your premium is going to be a heck of a lot more. What are they covering? They're covering the kinds of things that we've been talking about, the exposures of are they going to pay back a ransomware amount? Certainly that insurance is available. Are they going to pay for the recovery or the reestablishment of your operation if your technology goes down? Absolutely, that would be covered in the insurance. And this is a very, very good thing to have in place.
Thank you. And then, well, just kind of wrap up really quick on the formal portion of our discussion. Any final notes? Maybe a note about how AI might be available, not just for our own use, but also by the hackers to make their job a little bit easier, or dare I say, more efficient. The last thing you want is an efficient hacker, but they exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get into hacking without some kind of very high level of technology capabilities. So they've been on the bleeding edge, or they've been on out on the forefront of the utilization of all kinds of technologies. I mentioned Zoom Info, and they have the ability to crawl the internet very, very capably in terms of finding out information. They are utilizing AI these days in order to create the phishing emails that are really pointed, and when you receive it, you believe it because they have used AI to write something that is very specific for you, or create imagery that you can relate to, et cetera, et cetera. So their understanding of the what's coming next in terms of technology is quite exquisite. We talk about the foreign entities, be it Russian, be it Chinese, be it Korean, be it from all over the world. But when we take a look at those countries that I just mentioned, we kind of think that that's where all these hackers are coming from. That's not the case, and it doesn't preclude them from using AI to look and sound like somebody from who lives next door to you.
Yeah, I guess that's the classic grandparent scheme is starting to make its way through. Or I've even heard where AI is mimicking voices, which is very scary.
It
Yeah.
is. It is
Yeah.
for sure.
So I think we'll wrap up the formal Q&A. Thank you on for sharing so much great information about cybersecurity, some of the things we need to look at. Again, topic like this, we can only scratch the surface in about an hour. I think we're going to have a few articles and things like that coming up in our ecosystem. And I know you mentioned that you've got some checklists and things like that. I think what I'll look at doing is possibly when we run the article for this session, I will I'll provide in the digital world a link to one of those checklists if you're good with that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, Adam, and more than happy to help your audience better understand what can be a very anxiety provoking problem. So.
Yes. And to that end, with the audience, I'll grab one question just to kind of wrap things up with a bit of an informal toss at you. Ultimately, what does it matter if somebody gets into my system and sees my blueprints? I'll throw that one your way. Is it just as simple as that, or can we wrap up with a broader view?
Well, it's interesting that our sponsor today is Revisto, and talking about blueprints being exposed and what's happening. So much work and so much detailed information and so much proprietary information can go into a BIM drawing these days. That those are something that if someone was to access a BIM drawing, they may be taking a tremendous amount of that construction company's intellectual property along with it. And so the protection of drawings is vital, and so all of the measures that we're talking about are as applicable to something as simple as a drawing as they are to anything else.
Excellent, thank you. And I think you mentioned that you guys are users of Revisto too, so it's nice to know that you know the systems inside and out. That's one of the things in approaching you that I wanted to make sure that we had somebody who knew the business. It's not just walking in and sharing in generalities, right?
Yeah, our understanding of the construction space is well, we are contractors first and foremost, but we also have a very, very strong technical background. So, we've probably done what we refer to as a deep technical dive into well over 300 to maybe 400 different construction industry applications, and we know where their vulnerabilities are. We know the good ones and the bad ones. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And with that, I'll say we've reached the end of our Q&A sessions and that today. I'd like to thank everybody who took time to join us for the webinar, and I definitely want to thank Craig. You can see the neteffect.ca is up there. Visit him over there if you're looking for additional answers in that. Craig's very approachable, and again, it's one of the things I really liked about it, about working through some of the planning for this event. He's the COO of the Net Effect Contractor Advisors Inc., and he's the chair of the Canadian Construction Association's Technology Committee. So the fact that he's made time to foster this discussion, Craig, I really appreciate your doing this for the industry.
You're welcome, Adam, and to all the audience, have a great week.
Okay, and before we go away, I'd just like to thank the sponsor again for today's webinar. Revisto, they're a leading integrated collaboration platform used by professionals across the architecture, engineering, construction, and operations sector. Revisto provides a BIM collaboration platform for 3D and 2D workflows to streamline work and communication with all project stakeholders. I encourage you to please check them out, visit their website, explore their platform, and just a couple housekeeping notes for today. If you tuned in late, don't worry, we've got you covered. I mentioned that there will be a recording and a link to the recording. That's going to be sent out to everybody in the audience and anybody who registered. This video will also be on our YouTube channel, probably in about a week or so, maybe 2, depending on how the post-Thanksgiving workflow works. So feel free to share that video when it gets posted. And I hope you all took some great information from today's webinar. And once again, I'm Adam Friel. I'm the editor of Onsite Magazine. It's been my pleasure again to guide this discussion. Have a safe and productive rest of your day. Thank you.